This era is filled with experiments, tests, and inventions. From alchemists who lived before the Common Era to the modern science world of the 21st century, a lot has changed over thousands of years. As humanity, we have come very far and made significant progress. Yes, scientific studies have been beneficial, but there are no limits to the future and progress. Even if dozens of new inventions that change our lives emerge today, we won't stop tomorrow. Thanks to our new inventions, we will try to take one step further, and the only constant will be change itself. However, in history, there were such great atrocities, such ruthless experiments, that their benefits to humanity can be questioned. From the cruel experiments conducted by the Nazis during World War II to psychological traumas as intense as the SAW, here are some of the most terrifying experiments in history. The inhumane experiments conducted by the Nazis stand as a dark stain in our history. Not only did they torture and kill the Jews taken to concentration camps, but they also used them like lab rats for their own well-being. The experiments conducted during this period can be divided into three. The first aimed to facilitate the survival of military personnel, such as hypothermia treatment studies. They let subjects freeze to death. They also tried to make seawater drinkable and determined how high a soldier could fall from a plane without dying by throwing Jews from aircraft. The second type of experiment sought solutions for injuries and diseases soldiers might encounter in battle. Solutions were sought for diseases like malaria, yellow fever, and hepatitis, using humans as lab rats. There was no need to use animals because non-Aryans were seen as even lower than animals. The third type of experiment aimed to support the Nazi worldview. For instance, they wanted to see how different ethnicities would react to infectious diseases by experimenting on Jews, Roma, and others. As you can see, Hitler's animosity was not only against Jews. They also aimed to prove the racial inferiority of Jews. But when they tried to prove that diseases easily infect Jews, they found out that due to their geographical location, Germans were more susceptible to some diseases, and the experiment was abruptly terminated. Are emotions universal? Laughter, crying, loving, or being sad have no language and occur the same way everywhere in the world. Even if we produce different sounds or expressions, all these emotions originate from the same point, except for one, fear. The experiment that gave us this knowledge contains a frightening truth. American psychologist John Watson, ignoring ethical rules, conducted a terrible experiment on an 8-month-old baby named Albert. The purpose was to determine if fear in humans is a reflex acquired later or innate. To answer this question, they had to use a baby. Watson, along with his assistant, started examining children in the hospital. But to get definite answers related to fear, detailed tests were needed. They started looking for a family that would consent, eventually striking a deal with the family of an 8-month-old baby, known in medical literature as Albert. The experiment began with a few emotional tests. Then came the main phase. They wanted to see how Albert would react to various stimuli that could potentially cause fear or hesitation. White rats, a rabbit, pieces of paper, wigs, and masks were shown to Albert. Instead of showing fear, Albert smiled and even tried to play with them. After this continued for a while, the second phase began. Albert was taken to a room with nothing but a cloth bed. He was left alone, and then a few white laboratory rats were released into the room. Albert reacted the same, chasing after the rats and trying to catch them. He was not scared but was having fun. Finally, the last phase of the experiment began. Dr. Watson entered the room with a hammer and an iron bar. Albert didn't even notice him. He was busy following the rats and continuing to smile. Dr. Watson waited for the little baby to touch one of the mice. As soon as he touched, he began to make an uncomfortable sound by hitting a metal with a hammer. These sounds scared him. He stopped chasing the mouse. Shortly after, his attention was again on the lively white mice. Just as he was about to touch them again, the same sound was produced. This was repeated over and over for several days. Soon, not only the mice but also inanimate furry objects were included in the study. By the end of a week, little Albert started to cry and run away in fear whenever he saw a white, furry object. The doctors, who taught a baby, who was new to the world, what fear is, violated their ethical rules and didn't consider the potential harm to Albert's future. Although the character in the recently popular rabbit video that millions of people watched isn't real, it became the voice of many creatures. But I will return to the media. The history of scientific and experimental studies on animals dates back to nearly 500 BC. From that time on, the human species began to make other creatures pay the price to protect themselves. Recently, the most discussed issue is about rabbits used in cosmetic tests, but there are also other animals like monkeys, mice, cats, dogs used in different scientific studies, and this sensitivity should be valid for all of them. Cosmetic tests on rabbits consist of 3 different phases. For instance, for products like eyeshadows or eyeliners, which have the risk of getting into the eyes, the Drey's test, which is an eye irritation test, is applied. This method was developed in the 1940s by Dr. Drey's, a member of the American Food and Drug Administration. He developed a degree to determine how irritating the test substance sprayed into the rabbit's eyes was. Then he introduced this method, which he named after himself, to the cosmetic world. In fact, the success rate of cosmetic tests is not very high. In these tests, thousands of rabbits suffer eye damage, and some lose their vision entirely. Another type of test is applied to various cosmetic products that can be applied to the skin. Different parts of the rabbit's bodies are shaved, and this cream is applied. It is necessary to wait for 1 to 2 weeks to see the effect of these extremely burning and itching creams. During this period, rabbits are put into a small container where they cannot move to avoid scratching their irritated bodies, and various protectors are placed on their heads. For some rabbits, this test can last up to 6 months. Then the creams to be launched on the market are produced. However, this costs the lives of thousands of rabbits. The final test, for example, relates to cosmetic products with the risk of ingestion, like lipstick. What would happen if we accidentally eat our lipstick? To find out the answer, rabbits are forced again. The products are forcibly stuffed down their throats, and their reactions are observed. To understand how quickly the used substance kills, instead of ending the suffering of the writhing rabbits, their death times are calculated. These tests last a minimum of 4 weeks and again claim the lives of thousands of rabbits. Some people see the death of other creatures for the sake of our species' health as normal, even necessary. If we were still living in 500 BC, we might agree on this. However, today, these tests can be done without animals, and the possible effects on humans can be understood again. The reason brands avoid this is that it is more expensive than animal testing. In other words, large cosmetic companies do animal tests not for our health but to reduce the profit they make from us. If you have thoughts on this subject, don't forget to write them in the comments. If you think we can't do anything to prevent it and that the states will find solutions at their level, then you underestimate your power. If you don't buy products from brands that test on animals and if these brands can't sell in our country, whether the state allows it or not doesn't matter. We always have the right to voice our opinions through personal protest. The saying, drop by drop forms a lake, is still valid today. If you don't understand and I don't understand, how will we return nature to animals? In conclusion, we face the truth that animal experiments are unethical, especially when there are alternative methods available today. Taking all this information into account, it is vital for us to question the realities behind the products we consume and act as informed consumers. If you found this video useful, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Share your thoughts about the topic in the comments section. By supporting brands that do not test on animals, we can make a small yet significant difference. Remember, each individual has power, and together, we can bring about significant changes. See you in the next video. Take care.